Welcome to NTD News Today. I'm Fiona G.
And I'm Carrie Dunst.
In just a moment, we will have a more relaxed look at election night last night at the table with Mike Leon, NTD News contributor, Mark Tapscott, Epoch Times political reporter, Theron Bond, Democratic strategist, and Robin Biro, former Obama regional campaign director.
For our second panel, we'll be discussing the shifting voter demographics in the 2024 presidential race.
It's November 6th, which means Election Day is now officially behind us. Now Americans wait to see what the next 4 years will bring.
But before we look too far ahead, let's start the hour off with a more relaxed look at last night. We're joined here at the table with Mike Leon, NTD News contributor, host of the podcast Can We Please Talk, and director of policy and strategy at the Free and Equal Elections Foundation, and Mark Tapscott, Epoch Times political reporter.
As well as Theron Bond, Democratic strategist and campaign manager in local politics, and Robin Biro, former Obama regional campaign director, Democratic strategist, and former Georgia congressional candidate. Everyone, great to see you in person the day after Election Day. Very exciting stuff.
The day after? What happened yesterday? That was it? Oh.
I don't know, Mike. You tell me.
One big day.
All right, so it's the top of the hour. Let's start it off easy and a little bit chill. First impressions about last night. Theron?
You know, so many of my friends, fellow strategists, politicos asked me months ago, who did I think would win? And I sadly said, I think former President Donald Trump is going to win. I said, we don't have to like it, but I think that's what was going to happen. I don't know that I expected him to sweep as many states as he did, but I kind of had an inclination that he was going to win.
No surprise there for you, huh?
No, not really. I wish it wasn't that way, but here we are, and so now we have to figure out what we do with the information and how we prepare for the next 4 years.
Very interesting, Robin Biro.
So this is the interesting thing to me about this is that the polls were right this time because it showed in swing states that Donald Trump was leading in 4 of the 7 swing states, and the others were undecided, with Kamala maybe carrying 1. So they were mostly all right this time. And every time they get it wrong, they make some corrections to their formulas and their algorithms so that the next ones are more accurate. I think we may have hit that point now. So, you know, I've got friends who are upset, but me, I'm just a data nerd. I'm just looking at all the data, seeing where we went wrong and what demographics we lost.
Yeah. I love the data aspect because I can piggyback off of it. 2 things stood out to me as Robin was talking about there. We kept talking about this undecided vote. How could voters be undecided? How could they be undecided? They were undecided about Kamala Harris. They did not know enough about Kamala Harris. And again, 90 days to run a campaign. And it showed that they didn't know enough about her economic plans. And the Trump campaign kept messaging around 2019, your pocketbook, versus 2024. The second thing is the Latino voters, as you guys can tell by my complexion. I'm amongst that group. We're going to overanalyze it, but the Democratic strategists out there, who I know you guys know very well, stop blaming Latino voters for a second and figure out why they went to vote for the former president of the United States. Figure out what they're doing from a ground messaging standpoint that's resonating right now and made them vote for the former president.
Just to pick up on what Robin was saying, wouldn't you know it, when the pollsters finally figured Donald Trump out, he's not going to run again. That said, I'm very much of the mind, too. I had an inkling that he was going to win, but I did not expect that it would be anywhere near this. I expected more like a almost 2016 kind of scenario.
You know, if you're 18 and you're voting for the first time, when you were 10, there was the 16 election where the illegitimate president, and then in 2020, of course, the contested COVID, whole new way of voting. This is the first time I can remember in recent memory where you could go to bed if you had the heart to stay up all night and you'd know the result that night or in the morning. How does that affect sort of the characteristic of this election and sort of, you know, whether you wanted Trump to win or not, does it put a different spin on things now? Is like the whole country exhaling just knowing that it's not contested and we know sort of that the process worked?
So when you have something that's a mystery, you spend a lot of time spinning your wheels trying to figure it out, and you can't really do anything about it. You can't prepare a solution for it or a strategy for it. But now we know who the next president of the United States is going to be. And so what do we do with that information? How do we prepare the electorate for the next 4 years? What do we do about who we want the next president to be after Donald Trump has served for a second time? And I want to touch on something that Mike Leon said. He mentioned something about the Latino vote, and I think that's very, very important. That's a demographic shift that we saw. And I do think, unfortunately, there will be some blame placed on the Latino voters, male Latinos specifically. And here's the thing about it. We also have to understand their issues. If you truly know about Latino voters, a significant portion of Latino are conservative. A lot of them practice Catholicism. Mm-hmm. And so when you talk about abortion and reproductive rights being heavy for Democrats, and that's one of their champion issues during this cycle, and then you look at why Latino voters didn't necessarily come to that side, I guarantee you, if we really get down into the weeds, that played a significant part in why they voted for former president, now repeat President Donald Trump.
And Robin, your thoughts around just sort of the decisiveness of this election cycle?
Look, I'm an openly gay guy, and one thing that's interesting to me is that in 2020, Joe Biden won 81% of the LGBTQ vote. Last night, Donald Trump, yeah, 81%. Last night, we only got 67.5%. So we've lost support to the Republican Party from the LGBTQ community as well. So pretty much across all constituencies, the Democratic Party has bled support, and we have a reckoning. I'm actually kind of grateful in a way, because now we have to do a lot of self-reflection and look at where we went wrong. And I think there's opportunity in that.
You know, after 2012, the Republicans went through the whole process that resulted in the autopsy report. If the Democrats do not go through that kind of a process this time, that could signal some real long-term problems for them, because that will help the Republicans to consolidate the gains that they made this time around in the next election. And we could be looking maybe 2 elections down the road at a realignment in American politics.
You know, and just piggybacking on that, I love saying piggybacking, by the way. I apologize, everybody. But Carrie, you and I are big sports guys, right? Like, now afterwards comes post-game analysis, Monday morning quarterbacking, and you know, Democrats had an opportunity. They knew their candidate was going to be 81, 82 years old. They had an opportunity to do all of this and go through a natural primary process. A contested convention, open convention probably wouldn't have happened. But there's some candidates that were waiting in the wings that other Democrats felt would have been better positioned to beat Donald Trump, Gavin Newsom. And that's the problem. We never got to see that. So now we have to wait 4 years and figure out how to, we, the Democratic Party, have to figure out how over the next 4 years they rally around somebody who is going to be that next candidate. Is it Gavin? Is it somebody else that we haven't even actually thought about? Theron's laughing over there because she knows. She's thinking about somebody. Maybe she has somebody in mind. But it's so interesting how the storylines of yesterday, what states could she win, how the voter blocks are going to play out. Now the storyline today is, what does the Democratic Party do now that 71 million Americans told them that they don't want some of the policy and positions that they stand for?
Building off of that question of what are the Democrats going to do now, I mean, you are all very well connected within your own political circles. What exactly is the sentiment there right now? I mean, what's the next step for you guys?
If we're being honest as Democrats, we need a new DNC chair. We need to throw out everyone that has been at the top. We don't need any more James Clyburn fish fries. We don't need any more Jamie Harrison at the top. We need a whole new slate of people within the Democratic Party that are going to be unapologetic. We have tried it the old school way. There are some old tactics that work, but we haven't done a good job as a party to modernize those and to be more inclusive of what the party looks like today. Comparing that to the Republican Party, they haven't become big tent, but they've given more room and space for some folks who think a little bit differently than them, as long as they always come back to those root core issues. The Democratic Party has to realign and they have to refresh. We need a complete reset. And if those who are watching this that are those DNC leaders think anything different, then we will continue to lose. And I can tell you, up and down the ballot, we are tired. We are tired of losing. We are tired of screaming at the top of our lungs what needs to be done, what we see and hear on the grounds. And there's a huge disconnect from those in senior leadership with the actual people in the communities, at their homes, in their neighborhoods. If we get back to that and we do it the right way, then the next time a presidential election comes up, which will be in 4 years, will be better placed. And I honestly think deep down in my Southern soul that we have already seen who our next president will be, and that person rests among some of the folks who were surrogates this time. And I think if we run a 50-state strategy, which I am going to push until the cows come calling, we can do this thing. But we have to have the right people in place, and that's going to require some people to check their egos at the door, and that's going to be a hard conversation to have.
Okay, so surrogates. So we're talking about President Beyonce, President J-Lo.
No, Democratic surrogates. Democratic surrogates. People that are respected in the Democratic Party, people that have had significant accomplishments within that, I think they exist to pull it off.
But what Theron said is absolutely correct. We need this is a reckoning. This is a mandate now for the Democratic Party to look at everybody from the top down. And Jamie Harrison is a close personal friend of mine for probably 20 years now, but I'm sure he'll be replaced, as will most all other leadership. This happened to the Democratic Party every time. We're our own worst enemies. We did this in 2016 when we tried to push Bernie Sanders out of the way to clear the path for Hillary Clinton, and it came back to bite us. And it has done that again. We've never learned that lesson. Hopefully last night we learned a lesson to clear way for new leadership. There are people chomping at the bit, but there will always be gatekeepers, the old school gatekeepers of the party trying to suppress those. And we need to listen to the new blood now in the party.
You know, there's something else too. It is not lost on me that Lisa Blunt Rochester, Congresswoman, now going to be U.S. Senator in Delaware, has made history again in Delaware. It is not lost on me what Angela Alsobrooks has done in Maryland. These are two black women who made history with a black woman at the top of the ticket. But if we analyze the data, while they spoke of Vice President Harris, there was somewhat of a detachment in their ground campaigns about them being black women in the historical context. There's a reason for that, and we've got to talk about what that reason is and be honest about what the realistic chances were for Vice President Harris as a black woman at the top versus within one of the state structures.
Speaking as an Oklahoman from the South, I have a slightly different take. Not completely. I agree with much of what you and Robin both said. But I don't think the problem is necessarily in the persons, the personalities, or the skills. There's a lot of very smart people at the DNC. The problem is illustrated, I think, by one piece of data that was in the Atlas, the last Atlas International poll that was released Monday, that showed Trump leading by 4 points among voters with a $50,000 or less income. I saw that and that jumped out at me because I seriously doubt that Democrats, at least given the assumptions that we've seen in this campaign, are going to be able to come to grips with why that happened.
I think the biggest thing for me, and again, as somebody who's been covering the primary and caucuses and have even spoken to folks on the Biden campaign back in March, I was echoing this message of Latino voters because, you know, I live in Miami, Florida. I'm half Cuban, so my Cuban family lives down there. My mom is Puerto Rican, and so that side of the family lives in Orlando and all throughout New York and Pennsylvania areas where we have family. So I understand this voter block, but I also could see the cracks in the dam from 2016 to 2020. And I saw it on the ground from the Spanish radio stations, WQAM down in Miami, where there is a different type of messaging being done in Spanish by the Trump campaign to voters than was being done by the Biden campaign. And I think lost in all this, and I'm glad that Theron and Robin have been saying this because they're the Democratic voices on here. So hopefully people are listening to them out there. But hey, DC folks, strategists, start to reconnect and stop disconnecting with people who you think maybe didn't run a campaign or maybe didn't do something as successful, but yet live in those communities where you're trying to target those voters. Because at the end of the day, no matter what big think tank or what big super PAC, is going to pay you to try to figure all this out, there are people that are on the ground that are doing this work for you. And if you don't leverage any of that, last night is what the result will be.
And you're all articulating this disconnect from the ground to what happens at the national level, and there's a lot to dig into, and we're looking forward to continuing the conversation after the break.
That's right, but first we do have some information for our viewers. Donald Trump is called as winner in Michigan. This gives him 15 electoral votes. Let's take a look at that.